Afternoon and welcome to the RespectAbility webinar for August 10th, 2016. My name is Philip Pauli. I am the Policy and Practices Director for RespectAbility, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today talking about best practices in action, and we're continuing our focus on a state that is doing a lot of really innovative, very good work around expanding jobs for people with disabilities. Today we're talking about Nevada, and before I turn the floor over to our honored guests, I want to just talk briefly about the great work that I myself have seen in Nevada. Last year, we got in touch with Shelley Hendren and Janice John and the other wonderful folks at Nevada VR, and we started exchanging emails about their efforts around Employment First, employer outreach, and we were really impressed with the consistent quality of their work and the jobs that they're getting people into in the community at competitive integrated employment. They've been absolutely wonderful to talk to work with, and last year in May for the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals Conference, we were able to arrange site visits where we actually took people from the conference who work in the workforce system and actually got to go and see these job programs that they are managing and the wonderful work they've been doing. There's pictures of that on our social media stream, and they're going to be talking about what it's been like to work with those employers. And I just think it's going to be a great learning opportunity for everybody to find out what Nevada is doing and what they're doing right. So today we're joined by Shelley Hendren, Janice John, as well as Ken Pierson. As ever, I want to give a huge shout out to JPMorgan Chase for their support for our webinar program. They are the ones who allow us the flexibility to offer these webinars to the public for free with captioning so that it's an inclusive opportunity, and we will be posting an accessible version of this PowerPoint in a few days. So with that, again, I'm very excited to we'll be joining together, learning about what Nevada is doing, and Janice, Shelley, and Ken, please take it away.
Thank you, Philip. That was a great introduction, and we thank you for the kind words. Welcome to everyone. I am Janice John, the Deputy Administrator of Nevada Rehabilitation Division, and I'm stationed in Las Vegas. And we're excited to share with you some of our best practices, employer engagement, strategic collaborations, and sector strategies that are happening in Nevada. So before we jump into the webinar, we just wanted to share some information about Nevada. And I'm sure that many of you will be able to relate to our state's diversity. In Nevada, we truly have three distinct regions, each with their own unique culture and diversity, employment opportunities, and rich natural resources, and different economic statuses. So I'm not sure if everyone knows, but Nevada is the 7th geographically largest state in the country with 110,560 square miles. And not all of that is desert, I assure you. As you can see from our pictures, we have rural Nevada up on the top with beautiful mountains, wide open spaces. We have lots of opportunities for ranching and farming and mining activities, to southern Nevada in Las Vegas, which is known as the gaming and the entertainment capital of the world, offering Lake Mead and Hoover Dam, and the world's largest observation wheel called the High Roller. And then to northern Nevada, we look to Reno, which is now the home of Tesla's lithium-ion battery factory, which again is the world's largest factory, its physical area. And just an hour away from Reno, we have the amazing Lake Mead region with fabulous ski resorts and the opportunity for lots of summer fun. So while Nevada has the largest geographic area, we truly are a small state when you're considering population. Las Vegas boasts of the largest population in the state with a little over 2 million residents in the Las Vegas and surrounding cities. And in Reno, our population is 446,903 residents. And Elko, which is one of our rural areas in the northeast section of our state, residents a little over 51,000. And then our very own state capital, Carson City, has just a little over 54,000 residents. As you can see, a sampling of some of our main streets and our beautiful area around our state. So with such a large area to cover, our VR staff really has its work cut out for them. We have VR staff in 13 offices statewide. 2 of those 13 offices are main offices, one located in Las Vegas and another located in the Reno area. The other offices are all co-located with Job Connects, which is our employment, our workforce development office, and one-stop offices throughout the state. So we have a rather small staff, as you can see. We have 46 master's degree rehab counselors, and most of those counselors either have their CRC or they are eligible to sit for the CRC exam. So in total, we have 143 staff that make up our VR division, our rehabilitation division that includes administration, the vocational rehabilitation program, services to the blind, and the business enterprise program. So our objective for today's webinar is really to offer some suggestions and help all of us to really think big and long-term. And we do that by several things. And one of the first things we do is we certainly want to encourage making new friends and partnerships, which will allow us to collaborate, and collaborate. We really encourage active engagement with the Governor's Workforce Development Board and your local boards and working within your state structure. We found that creating an in-house business development team has really made a difference for Nevada VR. This team has brought a whole new level of commitment to the competitive integrated employment outcomes for our consumers with disabilities. We also want to consider and honor our employers as customers and partners. This has really been a game changer to change that kind of a perspective. And we know how important it is to offer the work experience often to our consumers and earlier. In all cases, this seems to lead to a more positive outcome, and providing those critical soft skills really leads to success for our consumers with employment. And finally, I think it's so important that we educate those we come in contact with. We are actively involved in outreach activities, using media, social media, participating on boards and councils. This really helps us to get our message out, to let people know who VR Nevada really is and what we have to offer. So just how did we get here today? Looking back at our history has been a really good exercise for us. It's been a great eye-opener as we realize just how much steady and slow progress we've made, but it has been steady progress over the years, and we're really proud of that. So beginning in 2009, the statewide Employment Leadership Network report kind of provided an excellent foundation. It provided great information. It allowed us to look at our kind of a needs assessment and decide just what we needed to do for our state. Some of the topical areas that we really were kind of outlined in this report included leadership, technical assistance and training, looking at our overall goals we needed to address, looking at finances, employer engagement, and service and innovation. Those areas were kind of outlined in that first report, and it started us on the path to really review what Nevada needed to do to improve employment outcomes for individuals with disabilities. In 2010, the Employment Policy Summit was held. This occurred, and it really was a strategic planning event, and it brought together agencies, employers, community partners in a way that we had really never done before in Nevada. The collaboration was really rich. We really examined how we provide the range of services, including employment to our consumers with disabilities, under a new light. And this really became kind of our path road to lead us to some of the next things that we would do over the coming years. And in 2011, a number of our summit work groups, they're still going strong at this time, and they were working on issues such as transportation, training, and employment for our consumers. And that leads to Shelley.
Actually, I think that leads to me. This is Ken Pierson. I'm the business development manager here, and welcome everybody. We wanted to talk about, in 2011, that's when the Nevada Governor's Office of Economic Development was created. And that was created during the legislative session of 2011, and was a collaboration between the Governor's Office and the leadership of the Nevada State Senate and Assembly. So the GOED, that's our acronym for Nevada Governor's Office of Economic Development, reports directly to the governor. And that was a real game changer. It used to report to the lieutenant governor. And why I say the game changer, GOED has helped recruit Apple, Tesla, that Janice mentioned, and in the Tesla factory is Panasonic. They're the ones who make the battery cars. And then also Faraday, which is a new auto manufacturer in the South. So, and then we have a large one of the largest data centers in the world is called Switch. So this has been a very big game changer by putting the economic development into the governor's office. In 2012, what we did, and this is really dear to me, the Vocational Rehab was recruiting for the position of Chief of Office of Disability Policy. In that position, what had happened is the recruitment was changed to, the position was actually changed to the Business Development Manager, which is a spot that I occupy. And really the Business Development Manager is really what we decided to do, create new opportunities with employers for people with disabilities.
Hello, everyone. This is Shelley Hendren, the Administrator for Nevada's Rehab Division. So the Employment First Ad Hoc Committee came into being around 2013, and that's when we started seeing the Employment First initiative kind of sweeping across the nation. And so Nevada's Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities organized this ad hoc committee to start looking at what Employment First meant, and is it an initiative we wanted to bring to Nevada. And out of that ad hoc committee came a white paper that was presented to the governor's office, and which led to the executive order listed there in 2014, which created a task force on integrated employment. And what we realized and knew pretty early on in the Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities, or DD Council, is that for us to bring this initiative to Nevada was really going to take a lot of thought. I know that some states kind of started their process with an executive order or a piece of legislation, and we really wanted to do more outreach and more research and be a little bit more contemplative on the steps we needed to bring that forward. And so that's what the governor's executive order did, is it created a task force, and we were charged with doing that kind of research and then creating a 3-, 7-, and 10-year strategic plan. And what also occurred in 2014, as all of you know, is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which was signed in July, signed into law. And those two things really went hand in hand together and were both kind of a catalyst for where we are today. In 2015 and ending in 2016, we took the idea of the business development manager and created teams. We knew that that was a best practice. RSA had recognized that as a best practice, and we wanted to build teams in Nevada so that we could have better outreach with employers and better liaison in looking at employers also as our consumers in the Voc Rehab program. And so we created some business development teams, which Ken will talk about a little bit more later. 2015 is when our strategic plan was due to the governor's office from the task force, and that was submitted, and we'll talk briefly about that. And then, of course, a confluence of lots of other things in 2016, which was the Unified State Plan, the requirement that came out of WIOA, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. That was submitted, and it was a year in the making with a lot of workforce individuals in Voc Rehab and Adult Ed Title II sitting around the table truly talking about how can we integrate and how can we avoid duplication of effort. And then the governor's strategic planning framework, basically his 5-year strategic plan for the state, also came out in 2016. and you'll see how all of these elements have converged to create quite a blueprint for assisting people with disabilities in Nevada to remove barriers so they can become competitively employed in an integrated setting.
So as I mentioned earlier, the Employment Summit, it truly was a strategic planning event, and it brought together a diverse work group of stakeholders, again, many of whom had really not worked together before. And the conversations among the work groups were really bold and really outside the box, and Nevada had just not had those conversations quite as candidly before. So the event was organized by the Nevada Center for Excellence in Disabilities, which is at UNR, and it was funded by Nevada's Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities. So it was actually a two-day event, and we had it held strategically in Las Vegas, in Reno, and in Elko in an effort to really hear from all the regions in Nevada, taking into consideration all the unique needs of all Nevadans. Our population that attended, we were about 250 participants statewide. The goals were really identified to identify barriers to employment for Nevadans with IDD, identify goals to overcome the barriers, and design a work program that would meet these goals. And the actual outcomes that we, after 2 days of really talking and working together, we decided that these were the areas that needed the most attention, and work groups would go forward with these activities. One was talking about collaboration, again, how important that piece is. Start career development at an earlier age, and I look at those two pieces and think how strategically that aligns with our Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act today. Develop and institute trainings and education and awareness programs for providers, for families, for consumers, for employers, and our community partners. Another priority was revise and define a reimbursement structure for service providers that increases employment for persons with disabilities. Expand transportation services. We saw that need statewide in all of the areas, but especially in the rural areas where they were hit very hard, not having the resources to offer this for individuals with disabilities. And last, but was to expand the use of assistive technology. So these became the priorities and focus groups that people have worked on since that first initial event.
So we really feel that that was the kickoff for systems change in Nevada, that Employment Summit. What happened at that summit was to bring a lot of entities around the table that had not really truly been working together previously. And so out of that, as I had said earlier, grew this executive order that created a task force to look at integrated employment options in Nevada. So the mission of the task force truly was to develop and implement a sustainable system for individuals with disabilities to achieve competitive integrated employment in the setting of their choice. And our vision was that we believe our job was to increase opportunities and decrease barriers, that all individuals, schools, families, and businesses must raise their expectations, that people will be hired because of their ability, not because they have a disability, that employment is a win-win for everybody, and that people are healthier, safer, and happiest with meaningful work of their choosing. So as I had said, in 2015, the task force submitted its strategic plan for Nevada. It was a 3, 5, and 10-year strategic plan. And to reach that point, there was a lot of outreach that occurred. We had a full participation state team scorecard that was filled out by all of the task force members. We had 13 key informant interviews that were conducted. We had 10 focus groups with 87 individuals that consisted of consumers, caregivers, family members, and advocates, and those occurred in the northern, southern, and rural parts of the state. And then, of course, we had surveys as well, and we received 356 responses from those surveys. And the surveys were directed to consumers, caregivers, family members, and advocates. And our responses represented 13 of Nevada's 17 counties. We also had those surveys in Spanish. So the result of the outreach and all this information was to create the strategic plan. And what you can see in black there are really the critical issues. There were 7 critical issues identified and a total of 12 goals identified. That first goal, some of the strategies that we've employed that I think are really important for you to think about in your states, in order to access and leverage all available resources, really you have to engage the governor in your state, your legislators, and certainly need the executive level support in whatever department your VR agency resides in. And then, of course, to pursue alternative or complementary funding and to develop and strengthen new and existing partnerships. Also are working on trying to establish a funding and rate plan that braids and blends funding across agencies. And we're trying to maximize state and federal resources. And, you know, the resource development and sustainability was listed as the #1 critical issue in Nevada. And that could be perhaps because our vocational rehabilitation grant is not fully matched. But we've employed a lot of strategies, including third-party cooperative arrangements, to leverage that funding that's not matched otherwise. And we're actually getting very close in Nevada to fully match it. Other areas, of course, critical issues, professional development, certainly with the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act and some of the changes within the Act. State voc rehab programs don't have funding necessarily for training and technical assistance in the way that it was funded previously, so we certainly have to stay on top of ensuring that our service providers and our staff are well-trained and competent professionals so that we can appropriately help our consumers achieve their goals. Transportation, as I'm sure, is an issue nationwide and is still an issue in Nevada. There's currently a pilot in Nevada of kind of a barter system for volunteer drivers to offer rides to people with disabilities, and then those consumers can offer some kind of good or service in exchange, and that's being piloted. We're looking at a voucher system for the bus system as well as taxi voucher systems. That is something that what we're doing really is to try and communicate to our legislators, to our governor's office, to anyone who will listen, that early in economic development is when we need to be talking about transportation. And Ken had mentioned the Tesla factory, which is being built here in Reno, Nevada. And what's really important about that is part of that conversation had to do with infrastructure. And us working very closely with the Governor's Office of Economic Development and our workforce partners has allowed us to share that message, and now it's being shared out. That as we're enticing employers to come to Nevada, that they think about infrastructure. And we've even gone so far as to ask the Governor's Office of Economic Development to perhaps suggest to potential employers coming to Nevada that maybe they would even facilitate a ride-sharing program if they're in a rural area where transportation options are really lacking. Employer engagement and development, you can see the goals that we have under that item, and certainly our workforce development teams that we've established have helped us to better communicate with employers, and I'll let Ken talk to you about those items. Government as a leader and model employer. One of the largest employers in the state, of course, is state government, and that's probably typical in a lot of states, but certainly is in Nevada. And so we can be a leader in employing people with disabilities, and what we have been working on in Nevada is a fast-track hiring process called the 700-hour program that allows state entities to hire people with disabilities and take up to 700 hours basically to have them learn on the job and make sure that it's a good fit. And so it's no risk to agencies truly to use this program, and it allows us to fast-track hiring. Now, of course, just like any program, our consumers have to be qualified for the job. And that's what we do, as you know, in the Voc Rehab program, is to help prepare people and remove barriers so that they're qualified for the jobs for which we're referring them and they're applying. And then lastly, on our strategic plan, and the last critical issue has to do with early and timely school assessment and planning for transition. And you can see goal number 11, which is so important and which is truly emphasized in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, that young people with disabilities, and of course the task force had to do with intellectual and developmental disabilities in particular, but we're looking at it more globally, of course, in Nevada, is that they have work experiences typical of their peers. We are really pushing for work experiences for all people with disabilities, but specifically transition-age students and youth. And you can see that that was one of our goals out of the strategic plan, and you'll see it repeated throughout this presentation and also when Ken Pierson comes back and talks about some of the work they're doing. The Unified State Plan was submitted in March of this year, as all the Unified State Plans were due in March or April of this year. And you can see the goals for Nevada's Unified State Plan and all of its workforce partners were centered around access, alignment, quality, and outcomes. And then, to me, this is very exciting, this next part. And this is the governor's strategic planning framework for Nevada. It's a 5-year strategic plan, and what we found so exciting is that there were so many goals and objectives that were specifically related to our consumers, to people with disabilities. So you can see, I don't have all of his goals here, of course. Goal number 1.1, lead the nation in high-quality job creation. Of course, that applies to all individuals who are seeking employment, but you can see objective 1.1.4, to cultivate a diverse and inclusive workforce and ensure equal opportunities. 2.3 has to do with safety, but objective 2.3.3 is encourage civic planning that promotes the safety needs of those with disabilities. This is a conversation that we've been having with leadership. For example, in Las Vegas, a lot of the sidewalks have street lights in the middle of the sidewalk. So obviously anyone with a type of mobility disability is going to have difficulty navigating those sidewalks. So we are really stressing with leadership to encourage civic planning to keep that in mind, the safety needs of people with disabilities. And so we're so pleased to see this in the governor's strategic planning framework for Nevada. Prepare all students for college and career success, ensure a highly skilled and diverse workforce, and you can see the goal under that, or sorry, the objective, increase the number of educational programs that require internship work experience completion. Again, as I said earlier, we're really stressing work experience. And then increase the number of Nevadans with post-secondary credential or college degree. Our Research and Analysis Bureau has said that we basically have a 10% shortage of degree holders for the current job market in Nevada. And then we have his goal 4.2, improve the quality and accessibility of medical services. What I like about this is the objective 4.2.1 underneath there talking about telehealth services. And we think this is something that people can really capitalize on to provide services to our consumers, especially in Nevada and our rural areas. And we are working diligently on creating contracts with service providers to be able to provide services via telehealth. And in Nevada, they're laying the infrastructure, and they've been doing that for a couple of years now for telehealth. And in the last legislative session, passed some legislation on how that would look and that insurance could cover, and what the requirements were. 5.1, as far as reducing the unemployment rate, we're really excited about that objective underneath. The unemployment rate for persons with disabilities will be reduced by 50%. That is a pretty big goal, and to me and to us here in Nevada shows the commitment of the governor and of executive leadership to employing people with disabilities in the workforce here in Nevada. So I'm going to turn it over to Ken Pierson to talk about our business development teams.
Once again, as Shelley mentioned earlier, we were able to that was built by repurposing some open positions. So what we have is we have one manager and 4 employment specialists. One thing that we found is that by offering free disability awareness training to our employees, that you get your foot in the door to discuss other services that we could provide. So it's really opened up the door for, and what we do is obviously for the employers, we offer recruitment of pre-qualified candidates that meet their requirements. We utilize paid on-the-job training funds, and obviously employers really. Also, we have supported services to candidates, which would and also along with that is businesses are always concerned with tax incentives and tax credits, which we always talk about and encourage them to. So our business development teams work on opening new opportunities with employers in the state of Nevada. We do a lot of networking, and we have several monthly meetings that we attend, such as state and regional economic development meetings. Expos, such as we have one coming up at the end of September, which is the governor's office. Business conference, and that's a lot of new employers come to that conference, and we're able to network. Also, we attend many job fairs throughout. Our employment specialists work with clients, consumers, people with disabilities, helping them with their resume writing and customizing, interviewing assistance, and including mock interviews. They match clients' resumes with employment plans of the state. A employment center that we call our one-stop operating center, which is actually a job board in the state of Nevada, and other job boards such as Indeed and other talent acquisition portal, which is called TAB. And what we do is also we assist our clients with Career Readiness 101, which is getting on with their career and taking also online. Or always talking to employers about recruitment in community-based. With that, we refer job readiness programs to our clients, and we'll talk about. So Shelley talked about the aligning of the positions, and this is really on the left-hand side is these are the jobs that we find that our consumers are. On the right is the top 5 demands jobs in Nevada. So as you can see, the sales and service workers are actually food service workers are in that. And on the second, the construction slide there, construction is in the state of Nevada really.
And I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll try and speak up louder. So the construction is seasonal work. So we don't see that much of our clients being in there. Clerical and administrative support are into the professional business services. Our freight stock and material handlers, that is really distribution working and logistics in that thing. And that fits right into trade and transportation and utilities. And then, of course, the healthcare industry it would fit into the education and health services. What we're finding out is we are looking at our employment specialists actually having about 80 to 100 clients, and we have about a 65 to 70% success rate in that field there. So our next slide is our collaboration of private and public partnerships. So we have put these together, and we have Office Depot that we designed in 2013. We have a partnership with Starbucks in the roasting plant and distribution center that's in Minden, Nevada, which is about an hour away from Reno, and that was started in 2014. And then also we have a certified center that this is a refurbishing center that PepsiCo had relocated to Las Vegas, and we have a program in 2014 that started there. So our work readiness programs, the programs are focused around creating career opportunities for people with disabilities while meeting the employer's needs. Many of the candidates that we work with have limited or no work experience, and the employer provides work location and job training. Vocational Rehab, we fund the soft skills instruction, and Vocational Rehab funds the participants' wages during the on-the-job training. So most of these programs, we first found out that one of our first programs was an 8-week program, and we quickly learned that we could cut the timeline down if need be. And most of them are fitting into a 2 to 6 week pre-training program that are usually about 4 days a week. The typical day consists of a half day of soft skill training and classroom setting, and a half day of on the job, on the floor, doing the job training. We have incorporated an internship following the training that the students that is paid for the students too. So it's a work paid internship. At the end of this program, a certificate is awarded for successful completion, and employers may choose to hire individuals at any point in this progress, and we're seeing a lot of that where there's been students are progressing along, and the employers would say, "Can we, let's hire them now." So here are some of our pictures of the Starbucks distribution center. It's a very large center. This is also a roasting plant. It's about 450,000 square feet. PepsiCo certified center is, I think, right around 75,000 square feet, and that's a refurbishing center. As you see, one of the gentlemen is working on a control panel, and then there you do actually decal and repaint those refrigerators that the other gentleman is looking at. Office Max is right around 500,000 square feet in 2 buildings, and this is our jewel that we started in 2013 that we said. So I'd like to talk about some program outcomes that we have. Office Max, we've completed 7 classes. Usually the classes are right around 5 to 6 students. With that, we've had 7 hires, and 14 of those hires have been at the Office Depot. The average wage is $11.60 an hour. Starbucks, we just completed our 6th class, and 35 students have graduated from those classes, and 24 hired, and 16 hired at Starbucks with a $13.25 average wage. PepsiCo, we had 1 class, 7 students, 6 were hired at PepsiCo, and so that is an unbelievable rate there. And that average wage is between $16.75 and to $23 an hour. So our common elements we see is the employers are looking for the recruitment needs. First thing what we see is treat the employers as consumers. Voc Rehab always needed to meet the needs of the needs of the employers, so that's what we're working on, is treat them as our consumers, and we will provide the qualified employees that they're looking for. So the employers are always looking for employees with work experience, so we give our clients work experience, and that's what we've been doing with our employment programs here. In review, the state findings indicate that the Nevada employers are saying that workforce is lacking major soft skills such as showing up to work on time, working efficiently, getting along with coworkers, and also the requested skills are critical thinking, judgment, decision making, and active listening, active learning. So what we've done is we've developed our soft skill curriculum to go in with those parameters, and we have developed it through the Department of Labor Skills That Pay the Bills. And the soft skills consist of company culture, vision, mission, core values, communication, enthusiasm, and attitude. Also teamwork, networking, professionalism, and problem solving and critical thinking.
So this is Shelley, and I want to talk about another executive order that was just issued in March of 2016 of this year, which realigns workforce development in Nevada. So, you know, I hope what you're seeing here is kind of a culmination of things in 2016 that's really positioning the state and Voc Rehab in particular to really help our consumers in a big way to achieve competitive integrated employment. What that executive order did. And I have to keep coming back to the slides so that we can kind of visualize the flow of information. And I think it's so important because this information really should be feeding the programs and the decisions that we make within Voc Rehab. So what this executive order did is create this Office of Workforce Innovation. And if you all will allow me to, we affectionately call that OWIN, and it's a lot easier to say than Office of Workforce Innovation. So the Office of OWIN was created, and truly it's to be a support to the Governor's Office, to the Governor's Workforce Development Board, and to sector councils. And all of your states should have a Governor's Workforce Development Board and sector councils. So let's kind of start at the bottom with the sector councils. You can see that there are several entities pointing to them. The Governor's Office of Economic Development that we talked about, the Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation, which are our workforce programs and also where Voc Rehab resides, and then, of course, the Nevada System of Education. So what those entities are doing is feeding information into these sector councils. And each state has these. And in Nevada, we have identified 8 industries where we have the most employment and the most revenue generated from. And you can see those listed there. What the executive order did is take these industry sector councils and make them smaller. They were pretty large and unwieldy, and they're public meetings, so it was hard to get business done. And so really they've been fine-tuned to 7 members, 4 of which are from business, and 1 is required to be from higher education. And so those groups are hearing presentations from other business owners. They're receiving information from all these offices. And note there that the Department of Employment Training and Rehabilitation also includes research and analysis, so they're receiving data from these agencies. They're receiving information from Voc Rehab. Whenever we see trends, we will share that with the sector councils. And then what they're going to do is issue recommendations back up to that new office that was created, the Office of Workforce Innovation, or OWIN. And so I have this slide here just so you can visualize that. So sector councils then will make recommendations up to OWIN to forecast what they see as short-term and long-term job growth, and they'll do it by region and by industry. And so, in my opinion, this is very important information for Voc Rehab programs to have, because not only do we have the ability and the mandate, of course, to remove barriers and prepare individuals with disabilities for employment, but we want to prepare them for careers, for sustainable careers where they can be self-sufficient. So we certainly need to know what the jobs are and what they're going to pay and in what regions in Nevada, and that's why I think this information is so important. So the sector councils then provide those reports on what they see as their forecast for short-term and long-term job growth in the state. So the Office of Workforce Innovation, or OWIN, then takes that as a support agency and feeds that information out. And you can see that bottom bullet there that talks about who they're sending reports to. So look how they've blanketed across the state, across agencies, including nonprofit organizations, the workforce development boards, local school boards, the apprenticeship council, Department of Education. That information now has a point where it will be gathered, summarized, and disseminated. And we think that's really exciting. That's often a step that's missing in state voc rehab programs, where they're not getting that information about in-demand jobs in their states. What this office, OWIN, will also be doing, as you can see, is developing career pathway strategies, which is very helpful. In Nevada, we truly don't have career pathways, and it's certainly something we can and should be doing for certain industries that are always growing here in Nevada. They're going to be able to recommend improvements in the workforce system and apply for grants, which I don't know about you guys, but it's often very difficult to have access to a grant writer to apply for some of these funding sources that are out there. So we'll go back to our picture here so you can see now the Office of Workforce Innovation then is sharing information out to a number of individuals, including the governor's office and this executive committee. And the executive committee was also created under this governor's executive order to liaison between the Governor's Workforce Development Board and this new OWIN office. So I'm going to talk about that briefly, and then we'll wrap this up because I know this is kind of heavy and not so fun information. It's exciting for me, but I'm like that. So OWIN feeds this information to the Executive Committee, and they evaluate and make recommendations to the Governor's Workforce Board, primarily regarding the allocation of funds for workforce development. So you see there's a different piece being added here, and a very important piece. Now, this doesn't affect voc rehab programs because we're not part of that funding stream, but certainly if funds are going to be allocated to our workforce partners to create a career pathway, that's something voc rehab programs will want to be involved in and want to collaborate. So it is important for us. And the Executive Committee also was established for more expedient decision making with regard to workforce programs, improvements, and funding. And you can see it's a 9-member committee from the Governor's Workforce Board, 4 individuals from business, and you can see the makeup of this committee now. This is important to voc rehab programs too, because the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act mandates, and so did the Rehab Act, but it's emphasized in WIOA, mandates that voc rehab programs have a seat on the Governor's Workforce Development Board and on local boards. So we can truly have a voice in the decision making for workforce programs, for career pathways, for spending in the state, and that's part of why I see this as so important to really create systems change in your state.
And this is Janice. I think we wanted to wrap up and really talk about how we have a better bottom line in Nevada through some of these programs and all of these efforts and collaborations that you've had presented to you today. I think that Todd McCullough, our Senior Operation Manager from Starbucks, really illustrates our journey so well as he says, the program has opened a lot of eyes at the Starbucks facility. Supervisors and partners look past disabilities and realize we all have different abilities in the workplace. And we really appreciate our partners and the collaboration that we've had at Starbucks. It has really been a wonderful experience for us. Some of the other items that we see that have really changed for us, we have a cultural shift that's occurring in all the workplaces. VR is now really offering employers access to the largest talent pool of individuals with disabilities. We're seeing cost savings to our employers by these programs that we're offering, and we're also seeing cost savings to vocational rehabilitation. So we've appreciated the partnerships and the relationships that we have had throughout this journey.
So this is Shelley, and we kind of come back to where we started of think big and long-term for systems change in your states. And we go back to this collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Can't say it enough, and of course the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act can't say it enough either. But if you think back to that slide where we listed out kind of major events that took place since 2009. Really, collaboration was key in that. The fact that vocational rehabilitation staff sit on the Governor's Council for Developmental Disabilities, that we had a seat on the Governor's Task Force on Integrated Employment, that we were part of the Employment Summit that brought a lot of people around the table, that we helped to write the white paper that was presented to the Governor's office. It's because Voc Rehab was positioned itself to collaborate with these other entities. I think it's especially important for Voc Rehab programs to collaborate with transportation, your transportation agencies in your state. We had transportation officials on the Governor's Task Force on Integrated Employment, and it was very eye-opening to them about the barriers present for our consumers to go to work. And so the more we talk about our message and the more we get it out there, then those conversations start taking place elsewhere. And so when our transportation authority starts planning their budget, then maybe they think about some of these barriers that were raised in this task force. I think it's important to work with your Disability Advocacy Center, your Center for Excellence in Disabilities, which will typically be on a college campus, and there's one in every state. Your Disabilities Agency, for us it's Aging and Disability Services Division, and we have found a number of ways to creatively collaborate with them, and they were also part of all those major activities that led to the system change that we're seeing now in the state, by these Governor's Office goals and objectives that include people with disabilities, that we see in our workforce partners' goals and objectives that include people with disabilities, that we see in civic planning, keeping mobility issues of people with disabilities in mind. Your Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities also exists in every state, and they have been an invaluable partner to the Voc Rehab Agency and to the state in general for creating systems change, which is their mandate, actually. Working with your Medicaid agency and finding creative ways to braid and blend funding with Medicaid waiver programs, especially the jobs and day training waiver programs, is really important, especially in light of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And then, of course, working with your executive leadership and whatever the structure is in your state. So, we showed you probably in great detail what our structure is in Nevada. But all states have a Governor's Workforce Board. All Voc Rehab programs have a seat on that board. All states have local boards, and we have a seat on those boards. The Economic Development Office, as we work more closely with them, as they are enticing employers to come to your state, as they are in Nevada, they're having conversations with these employers during negotiations about hiring people with disabilities, and perhaps suggesting some kind of diversity initiative for employers that are coming to the state, and asking them to consider civic planning, transportation in particular, as they come to the state. The business development teams, as I said, has been identified as a best practice by RSA, and certainly we are seeing that in Nevada. Their work is invaluable as far as how many consumers that they are working with and how many employers that they're liaison with, and creating these work readiness programs. And we're also in talks currently with Walgreens, with CVS, some local hospitals to do similar programs. This idea of employers as consumers is really a new way of thinking for Voc Rehab programs. And instead of looking at what we provide as a social service or a human service, truly we are preparing people for the world of work and self-sufficiency. And to do that, we have to consider employers as our consumers as well. We have to meet employer needs to be successful in meeting our consumers with disabilities needs. And then, as Ken said, two key pieces, which is emphasized in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, especially for students and youth, but for everyone, is getting them work experience. And Voc Rehab can do that through paid experience, these work readiness programs through community-based assessments, even job shadowing, getting work experience, and then that second component, soft skills, because you saw in our Unified State Plan what came out of our Research and Analysis Bureau that basically employers in Nevada, and this is probably true nationwide, are saying none of our employees have soft skills. Not just people with disabilities, but none of the employees, that there's a real lack of those soft skills. So we ensure to provide that to all of our consumers whenever needed, and it's offered through our community colleges as well as service providers, and also in our work readiness programs. And then that last bullet of inform through outreach media and social media and participation on other boards and councils. We launched a media campaign, and you can see we're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and we have a website, and they are designed specifically for employers in mind. So not for consumers. We have a different campaign to let them know what services we provide, but it's for employers to see what we do and that what we provide are skilled, dependable employees that they can use in their businesses. And so I would say that you should all have an elevator speech ready for employers. I should say whenever you meet employers, you should talk about hiring people with disabilities and that it's a skilled workforce and that VR can even pay them to learn on the job. So this concludes our presentation, and your presenters are listed there in our contact information. We'd be happy to hear from you, and I believe we have some time for questions. I'll turn it over to Philip.
Shelley, Janice, Ken, thank you so much. I was furiously taking notes through this whole thing. You guys are doing a lot of really great things, and I know I have questions, but I want to first give people either on the chat box or on the phone the opportunity to ask their questions. Operator, can you quickly explain how somebody on the phone can ask a question?
Yes, if you have called in, you may queue up for verbal questions by pressing 7 followed by the hash key on your phone now.
Great. While we're waiting for anybody else to ask a question, I'm really curious. You mentioned very much in passing blending and braiding funding through Medicare and Medicaid. Can you talk more about how that works, what you've done?
Yes, thank you. Janice, do you want to take that one or you want me to?
I'll defer to you, Shelley.
Okay. So what we have are a couple of programs where we work with individuals who are identified in sub-minimum wage employment, and we have workforce programs that work with those individuals to move them out of that environment and off of those waivers into competitive integrated employment. And so those individuals who are on Medicaid waivers, what we do is match the funding that's provided to them for those waivers. So if it's $80 a day, then Voc Rehab provides $80 a day for that individual to receive more specialized work readiness and behavioral supports type training. We have a pretty intricate program to do what I spoke about. That's the Career Development Academy is what we're calling it in Northern Nevada. We also have which is with High Sierra Industries, and then we also have a similar program in Southern Nevada with Opportunity Village. And we basically match the Medicaid waiver funding with our funding so that we can provide specialized training.
Great. Operator, any phone questions?
No questions on queue.
Okay. I'm curious, I want to go back, and again, I'm really curious. You mentioned social media. Obviously, social media is a great way to connect, but I don't think a lot of people think about it in the context of getting people with disabilities jobs. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your use of social media as an outreach tool.
Sure, this is Shelley again. So what we thought was most important are to have success stories, and we also thought that we should use employers telling other employers about their experience in hiring and having employees with disabilities. Because it's one thing for a state agency to say that, and it's quite another thing for an employer to speak to another employer. So we have a number of videos on our website and on our YouTube channel that is exactly that. Employers talking about their experience in hiring individuals with disabilities, sometimes about what supports the Voc Rehab program provided, but more importantly, how it's affected the culture, which is kind of an unintended consequence that we're seeing, is that there's a cultural shift with these employers when they start to hire people with disabilities, and they come back and say, we want more. And also they talk about the skill sets that these employers are bringing into the workforce and what it's like to work with them and how dependable they are. And so we see that as a really strong tool for employers to tell other employers about their experience in working with people with disabilities.
Great. Well, I know we're running out of time. Last call for questions either in the chat box or on the phone. Operator, anybody?
Oh, just in time. We do have a question queued up. Rebecca, go right ahead, please. Rebecca, you're live.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. What was your question, Rebecca?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Okay, I'm so sorry, I'm having phone difficulties. Okay, so my question is, I sit on the board for the Down Syndrome Organization of Southern Nevada. I'm also the National Down Syndrome Society Ambassador for Nevada, and I'm so excited about this program. I want to know how I can get more involved, and I was also curious if you knew about the DS Works Act that was coming forth that's going to be able to provide, we're trying to have it so that people with disabilities can earn more money but still keep their Medicaid. Oh. And I'm wondering if that's integrated in this plan at all.
Shelley, Janice, you want to take that one?
Sure, this is Shelley, and then I'll let Janice answer if she has information. So I'm not familiar with that act, and I would love to know more. I would just say that my contact information is there on the screen, the office phone number, and also my email. And certainly we should talk about how we can kind of integrate what you're doing with what we're doing.
Okay, that'd be fantastic. I'm so excited for everything that's going on. I just moved here in August, so this is just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time for me to get involved. So thank you. I will contact you, and thank you for taking my question. I'm sorry about my phone difficulties.
Well, I'm very glad you're able to get through to us. It sounds like there's a great connection to be made right now. So. Well, with that, I think we are out of time. I want to thank our presenters, Shelley, Janice, Ken. Their contact information is on the screen. I think they're doing incredible work. They're doing all the right things. They're really moving the needle to empower more Nevadans with disabilities to find employment. I'm just so delighted to learn from them today. This concludes today's webinar. Lastly, I want to give a huge shout out to JP Morgan Chase for their support of RespectAbility's webinar program. They really enable us to be able to provide free webinars to the public on the types of best practices that Nevada is modeling. We're in the process of developing a whole new slate of webinars for the coming weeks. So for those of you who are on today's webinar, you'll get an email follow-up in a couple weeks with exciting announcements about new topics. Lastly, here is RespectAbility's contact information. Thank you again for joining us today, and go fight win. Thank you very much.